Why did the US government spend millions of dollars and decades of research on psychic espionage if it was just nonsense? In this video, former Project Stargate researcher and chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, Dr. Dean Radin, explains the rigorous science behind telepathy and remote viewing. What did the government actually find? Are superstar remote viewers physically different from the rest of us, or is it a trait we all possess?
When they first started studying this in the 1800s, what were they specifically trying to isolate or figure out?
Well, just like today, people would see apparitions. They would have the sense that there were telepathic connections between people. They'd have precognitions. And there was the beginning of figuring out ways of using experimental science to be able to study these things under controlled conditions. And the word control is important because it means you exclude coincidence by the design, and you exclude leakage of information. You exclude all kinds of things. So the only thing left over is if that telepathic thing was real, then we'd be able to see it in the lab. And the short story is, yeah, so we're now 150 years past that, and we have very, very strong evidence that telepathy does exist.
So what was the first evidence that they were able to get out of these initial experiments?
They used to call it thought transference. And so the methods they were using then would not pass muster today. They would have like two kids who say, we can do telepathic transfer between us. And then many times they would find that the kids were using some kind of signal. And so that wouldn't work today. Today, people have to be strictly isolated. Neither can know what the target is that they're trying to transfer to the other person. And we do lots and lots of replications with lots of people. And so that then forms a body of evidence where it becomes extremely difficult to think of what the flaw might be. And in fact, if you ask skeptics about it, who know the literature, their usual response now is either there's no plausible flaw that they can identify, because a lot of time has been spent to figure out what might be a flaw. And the second response, which is more recent now, is we're not even going to look at the evidence because we know it's impossible, which is no longer a scientific argument. But that's the approach. We're not going to look at the data.
That's silly.
Yeah.
Well, it's really silly when you consider the intelligence agencies have spent an enormous amount of money and a considerable amount of time studying remote viewing. Like, why? Why would they invest that much time in nonsense?
Right.
Why would they invest that much time in something where there's no evidence whatsoever and they've never achieved positive results? That doesn't seem to be correct.
No.
If you listen to the stories of the guys like Hal Puthoff and all these different people that have been involved in these remote viewing experiments, they had actionable data that they derived specifically from remote viewing. I don't understand it. I've never done it. I've never attempted it. I don't know if I can do it. I did it once. We had an experiment on a television show that I did where we had this guy who claimed to be a remote view this area, and he was off. But it was also under duress with cameras. Like, is that the state of mind that you want to be in when you're trying to remote view? No, that's not ideal at all. And that is a factor, a major factor in whether or not you can understand intuition. Is what is your state of mind? Are you in a place of complete anxiety and fear, or are you totally relaxed and focused on what you're doing? Is there any distractions? Is there a jackhammer nearby? Is there a dog barking? Is there something that could interrupt this state of mind that you're trying to achieve? Because there's different states of mind. We know this. We can measure this. We can measure the brain waves. We understand that the state of mind, it's not a static thing like a toaster. You know, it's not on or off. There's a bunch of different shit going on in your brain, in your mind, at any given time. And so the idea that remote viewing, which is some very bizarre connection that some people have to reality that's nowhere near local. They can describe things in detail, talk about submarines that are being constructed in the Soviet Union. Like, there's weird shit to that. And if you just dismiss that, you're being a fool. There's something there. And the only way anybody figures out there's something there is if you study it. If actually intelligent people are willing to look a little foolish and spend some time studying it.
Right. So that brings us to my next job. So after I got my doctorate, I started working at Bell Laboratories.
Ooh.
So it was the biggest laboratory in the world at the time. It was still the Bell system. And because I was interested in these kinds of things, for some of my time at Bell Labs, I started doing little psychic experiments involving mind-matter interaction and also involving precognition. So there's an ongoing link here that goes back to the Institute of Noetic Sciences in a strange way. Edgar Mitchell gave the first money to SRI International, which is where Hal Puthoff and Russ Targ was, to do remote viewing studies. He also brought Uri Geller to the United States, and he brought SRI and a bunch of other places, including Bell Labs. So when I was working at the labs, I knew that there had been people who had seen some of the stuff that Geller did, and I was doing these little psychic things. So I asked for permission to be able to present some of the work I was doing at an annual conference of the Parapsychological Association, which is an affiliate of the largest scientific organization in the United States, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. So many people don't know that the Parapsychological Association is one of the 200-some affiliates of the AAAS. It's a legitimate scientific organization. So I did this precognition test. I asked for permission, and I got permission not only to give my presentation at the conference, but to use the Bell Labs imprimatur. So I was giving this as some guy from Bell Labs talking to this audience. Unbeknownst to me, there were a few people in the audience who came up afterwards, and one of them said, if there was an opening, would you be interested in joining the Stargate program?
Whoa.
And so that was an offer I couldn't refuse. That's one of these cases of you have this door or you have that door. Well, that door looked really interesting because it was known at the time that there were people at SRI doing this sort of thing, but the classified portions were a rumor. Like nobody knew what was really going on.
Right.
So I took a leave of absence.
That must have been exciting.
Yeah.
You get that offer?
Yeah.
Stargate?
Yeah, are you kidding?
Holy
So-
shit.
So I took a leave of absence for 1 year from Bell Labs. And so I went to SRI International. Hal Puthoff was my boss. And then Ed May, when Hal left in 1985, Ed May took over. He may not be a name that is known as well, but he was the director for 10 years. And so I worked on that project, and it took a long time to get the clearances because, first of all, I didn't know anything about classification or anything, but I figured, well, maybe it's just secret. No, it's just top secret. No, it's top secret SCI. No, it's top secret SCI special access program, which means there's literally a book that you have to sign, and you can see all the other people who have signed that book. Special access means even if you have a top secret clearance, you cannot know about this place. You cannot know about the code word. The code word was classified. So, I mean, which seems kind of odd because if you have a code word, it's not saying anything. But nevertheless, that's how it worked.
Wow.
So we were the research side of people who talk about Stargate. Mostly they're talking about the military side, the operational side. Well, we knew what they were doing, but our mission was different. Our mission was figure out those questions that you're asking. How does this stuff work? Like, is it real? Yes. Some people are very talented. What are the limits of it? Can you block it? Can you shield it? Can you do camouflage? And one of the main areas was, what's the difference between someone like Joe McMonagle, who's a superstar in this area? Why is he any different than anybody else? Because, like, when I first met the Ingo Swann and Joe and a bunch of other people, they were so different than my stereotype of Madame Zodiac that they, like, I say, you got to be kidding. These people are remote viewers. They're just like guys and gals. And so every method was used to try to figure out, is it psychological difference? Is it physiological? Is it medical? What is it? And the answer was, we couldn't find anything. Now, there may be some background about the people themselves, but in terms of finding out something that we could use to select, because the Army and others were interested in getting lots of other people who would be talented too.
So there was no consistent factors?
No, there wasn't anything.
Wow.
So,
That seems crazy.
except maybe talent. Two things, talent and openness. So talent is natural talent. It's partially based on genetics. And openness is a psychological trait where you're simply open to experience. So people who tend to be to have like a certain way of thinking about things and are not open to other stuff, they block it. They could block it real good. People who are open to experience and willing to try new things, they in general tend to do better.